Hey guys, all right, so this is a video to go over the 3.6 day 2 homework. So we'll move that out of the way because there's not going to be enough space to do it there. So I'll title this 3.6 day 2 HW. Okay, so I'll start with number 23. Y equals 1 over the square root of x plus 2. Okay, so first of all, we have a number divided by the square root of x plus 2. So we're going to have to be using the quotient rule here because we have a quantity divided by a quantity. All right, so let's see. If I use quotient rule, it's low d high minus high d low over low squared. The low is the square root of x plus 2 times the derivative of the high. Derivative of 1 is 0 minus the high is 1 times the derivative of the low. Now, because that involves chain rule, I'm going to write d dx, and I'm going to convert that to an exponent, x plus 2 to the 1/2 power. Okay, because I'll have to use chain rule on that in a little bit. And then all over low squared. So the square root of x plus 2 quantity squared. Okay, so next, well, we have to use the chain rule on that part right there because we still have a derivative that we have to take. Okay, so y prime is going to equal, well, anything times 0 is 0, so that's gone. And we have a negative out front, and then we have to take the derivative of the inside. Derivative of x plus 2 is just a 1, times, we have to drop down that exponent of 1/2, so times 1/2 times the inside. But now we have to subtract 1 from that exponent. 1/2 minus 1 is a negative 1/2. All over square root of x plus 2 quantity squared. Okay, so now to clean this up a little bit, I'm going to need to drop this like it's hot because I have a negative exponent. Okay, so it's going to look a little weird. So we're going to have negative 1 times 1/2 is just negative 1/2. But that 2 is in the denominator because it's a 1/2. And then this gets dropped to the bottom because it has a negative exponent. But we're all over the square root of x plus 2 quantity squared. So a fraction divided by a fraction is what we have. So dividing fractions, it's easy as pie. You flip the second and multiply. So I'll have negative 1 over 2 times, let's just convert that back to the square root of x plus 2, times, flip the second and multiply, so 1 over square root of x plus 2 quantity squared. Okay, so then I have y prime equals, well, negative 1 times 1 is just negative 1. All over, there's a 2 out front, and now I have an square root of x plus 2 to the first power times the square root of x plus 2 to the second power. So we just add the exponents, product rule on the exponents there, and we get negative 1 over 2 times the square root of x plus 2 quantity cubed, and that is the derivative. So these get a little tricky because there's a lot of steps, and it's really easy to forget a step. So it helps to color code things. I was trying to do this assignment without color coding, and I get lost easily. So color code, every time you do a step, change a color. It really does help, I promise. Okay, number 25 is the one I'll do next. 25 is not as long. I have f of x equals x squared times x minus 2 to the 4th. Okay. Well, because we're multiplying right there, when they're next to each other, they're being multiplied, I'm going to need to use the product rule. Okay, so let's set that up. F prime of x equals, You have the first times the derivative of the second, but because this whole thing, x minus 2 quantity to the fourth, is going to involve chain rule, we'll wait to do that. So just put d dx, that will tell us that we need to take the derivative of x minus 2 to the fourth, plus, now take the derivative of that first term, the derivative of x squared is a 2x, and multiply that times the second term, x minus 2 to the fourth. Okay, now I need to still take this derivative, but this involves chain rule. Okay, so f prime of x equals, I have an x squared out front, and then the derivative of the inside of x minus 2 is just a 1, and then I have to bring down that power of 4 times the inside stuff, and now subtract 1 from the exponent, so now that's a 3. Plus 2x times x minus 2 to the fourth. Okay. All right, so now in the front I have an x squared times 1 times 4. So that will give me, let me set this up, a 4x squared times x minus 2 to the third plus 2x times x minus 2 to the fourth. I think you're going to be really happy now because you're done. You do not need to multiply that out. You can leave it like that. And that's number 25. All right, next one will be number 27. And that is y equals x times the square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay, so since I have two things being multiplied together, again, next to means multiplication, I'm going to be using product rule. Okay, so let's set it up. Y prime is the first term times the derivative of the second. Now this is going to involve chain rule because we have a square root. So let's write this as d dx, because we'll have to take it later, of 1 minus x squared to the 1/2 power. Okay, so don't try to do it all at once. That's where things get confusing. All right, plus, all right, we have the first term times the derivative of the second, plus the derivative of the first term, derivative of x, is a 1 times the second, which is just the square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay. Now, I still need to take this derivative, and I have to use chain rule for that. So y prime equals x times the derivative of the inside, so the derivative of 1 minus x squared, well, the derivative of 1 is 0, and then I'll have to drop down that negative 2x, okay? And then we have to drop down the overall, so times a 1/2, and then the stuff on the inside, and then 1/2 minus 1 is a negative 1/2. Okay, plus 1 times anything is just itself, so I just have the square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay, we have some cleaning up to do, like these are being multiplied together, so these 2's will cross cancel. So I'll have y prime equals, I have x times negative x times 1, so that'll just be a negative x squared times 1 minus x squared to the negative 1/2 plus the square root of 1 minus x squared. All right, so because this has a negative exponent, we got to drop it like it's hot. So y prime equals negative x squared over, let's switch that back to a square root now, square root of 1 minus x squared plus the square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay, because these are the same, we have to get a common denominator. We have to keep going to simplify. So we need, the common denominator is going to be that 1 minus x squared under the radical, But whatever I multiply to the bottom, I must also multiply to the top to keep it equally balanced. So y prime equals, I'll have negative x squared plus, anytime you multiply a radical by itself, poof, the stuff inside gets to come out. So the 1 minus x squared gets to come out. All over, now the common denominator is the square root of 1 minus x squared. So remember, we're adding these fractions. All right. We have a negative x squared and a negative x squared. Those add up to a negative 2x squared, and then that plus 1, all over the square root of 1 minus x squared. Whoop, there it is. Okay, and then number 29. Are these videos helping, guys? Am I wasting my time, or are they helping you? Please let me know. Comment on these videos. Please tell me that they work for you. X over the square root of x squared plus 1. Or if I'm wasting my time, let me know that too. Help me out. All right, so I have x divided by something. So that means I'm going to be using a quotient rule on this. So let's set that up. So y prime equals low d high minus high d low over low squared. So the low is the square root of x squared plus 1. Derivative of the high, derivative of x is 1, minus the high is x. Low d high minus high, derivative of the low. Well, that is going to involve chain rule. So let's just put d dx for right now. X squared plus 1, and that's to the 1/2 power. Because we know when we have a function within a function, we're going to have to use a chain rule. All right, all over low squared. So the square root of x squared plus 1 quantity squared. Okay. All right. Well, anytime you multiply by 1, the quantity doesn't change. So I just have the square root of x squared plus 1 minus x. And now I need to do the chain rule on this part. So the derivative of the inside is a 2x. We got to drop that 1/2 in front, so times 1/2. Keep the inside, x squared plus 1, and then 1/2 minus 1 is a negative 1/2. All over the square root of x squared plus 1 quantity squared. All right, let's clean this up some. So what I have is the square root of x squared plus 1 minus, I'm going to have x times 2x times 1/2. The 2's are going to cancel, so I'm just going to have x times x. I'm just going to have an x squared times x squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2. I should have dropped that like it was hot, but I forgot to. Oh well, I can just do an extra step. That's okay. Over x squared plus 1 quantity squared. Okay, we're going to end up getting that fraction over a fraction type of situation over here, because we're going to have the square root of x squared plus 1 minus the x squared will get to stay on top, but this, because it has a negative exponent, I got to drop it like it's hot. So I'm going to have x squared over x squared plus 1 quantity to the 1/2 over square root of x squared plus 1 quantity squared. Now the reason why it doesn't go down with this denominator is because I'm going to have to combine like terms right here with this one. So I'm going to have to get a common denominator and then combine and then go from there. That's the reason why. Okay. So quotient rule, when we have to use quotient rule, that's when it gets a little sticky with all these extra things. All right, so this is technically the square root of x squared plus 1. That's what the 1/2 means. So I'm going to need to multiply top and bottom by the square root of x squared plus 1 so that I can get that common denominator. Okay, So I get y prime equals square root of x squared plus 1 times itself means poof, the stuff inside gets to come out, minus x squared. All over now the common denominator is the square root of x squared plus 1. All over the quantity of the square root of x squared plus 1 squared. So we have a fraction divided by a fraction. So dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second and multiply. So we'll have x squared minus x squared, those cancel out. So I just have a positive 1 over x squared plus 1 times, flip the second and multiply, so 1 over the square root of x squared plus 1, quantity squared. Okay, so this is a quantity to the first power, and this is the same quantity to the second power. So we get to use the exponent product rule on that, and we just add the exponents. 1 plus 2 is 3. So I'll have the square root of x squared plus 1 quantity to the third power. Whew, and there is the derivative. Yeah, quotient rule always takes a lot longer than product rule, especially when we have a fraction divided by a fraction and we have to simplify those. So that's the only time it gets super tricky. Otherwise, they're just not so bad. It's just there's a lot more work to take derivatives of these compositions of functions. All right, so we have 2 more problems. Okay. Okay. So next is number 14 and number 22. Number 14 will not be as long, promise. And it's f of x equals the cosine cubed of 2x. Okay, so let's identify our overall. Our overall is cosine cubed. The inside is the cosine of 2x. So overall, cosine cubed, inside cosine of 2x. Okay, so let's take a derivative. We're going to use the chain rule. Okay, so the derivative of the inside, I'm just going to write d dx of cosine of 2x, because I am going to have to use chain rule on that inside because it's got a function within a function on the inside there. All right, times, we have to drop down the 3. So we'll have cosine of 2x. Now it's squared. Okay. So we have to do chain rule again on this part. So CR again. So f prime of x equals, okay, the derivative of the stuff on the inside, of the 2x is a 2, times the derivative of cosine is negative sine of the inside stuff, 2x, times 3 cosine squared of 2x. Okay, let's clean this up a little bit. F prime of x equals, so we have negative and then times 2 times 3. These are all the outside numbers. So that'll be a negative 6. And then we have sine of 2x and then cosine squared of 2x. And guess what? That's the answer. Told you it was short. Wasn't that bad. All right, number 22. We have y equals the square root of 2x times the sine of 3x. Sorry, I have Mando on my shoulder and I thought I felt something, so I thought he pooped on me, but I don't see anything. So I think I'm good. All right, I don't want to use that light purple. It's so light. Okay, so we have 2 things being multiplied together here. So we're going to need to use the product rule on that. Okay, so let's set it up. Y prime equals the first, so square root of 2x, times the derivative of the second term. So I'm going to need to, because it's the derivative of 3x, this is a quantity inside of a function in a function. I'm going to have to use chain rule on that, so I'm going to wait to do it. So I don't want to do too much all at the same time. Plus the derivative of the first term, so the derivative of the square root of 2x. So the square root of 2x is the same as 2x to the 1/2 power, because we need it in that format so that we could do chain rule on it. And then times the sine of 3x. Okay, so I have to do the chain rule in 2 spots. I have to do the chain rule right here. And I have to do the chain rule right here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to get y prime equals the square root of 2x times, well, the derivative of the inside, the 3x is just a 3. Okay, and then the derivative of sine is cosine of 3x, plus the derivative of the inside of the 2x is a 2. We have to bring down that 1/2, so times 1/2. And then the inside, which is 2x, and then 1/2 minus 1 is a negative 1/2 power. Okay, so got to change colors. So y prime equals, so out front here, I can bring that 3 to the front of the radical, so 3 square root of 2x cosine of 3x plus 1/2 of 2, these cancel, that just turns into a 1. And since this is a square root and it's a negative, let's drop it like it's hot. So 1 over the square root of 2x. Okay, we're going to need to get a common denominator. So let's put this over 1 because I see a square root of 2x in both of these. So we will be able to do it. If I didn't have that, then I would be done, but I do have it. So square root of 2x, got to multiply top and bottom. So y prime equals, so anytime you multiply a radical by itself, poof, the stuff inside gets to come out. So the 2x will get to come out, and I'll have 3 times 2x, which is 6x, and then cosine of 3x, and then, oh, I forgot something. I forgot to bring down that sine of 3x. I was like, where's the sine? Okay. All right, so it'll be this plus the sine of 3x. All over, I have my common denominator, square root of 2x. And that's it. I can't do anything else. So that's the answer. Sorry about that. I forgot to bring down this. That's what I had forgotten. I took that derivative and then I forgot about that. See, it's easy for things to go missing. That's why it's important to color code. And even when you do that, there's chances that you make mistakes like me. But we're human, it happens, and I will learn from that. And so will you. All right, that is the homework.